Ronak, are you ready? Uh, Thank you. Good evening. This is My name is Jerome Bande. I'm the director, Montgomery County Government, the East County Regional Office. We would like to the welcome you and everyone here to the East County FY24 Operating Budget Forum. Special thanks to the county executive, members of the East County Citizens Advisory Board, staff from OMB, the Technology, Enterprise, and Business Intel representatives, the library directors here with us, and allowing use of this magnificent building for this particular function. And here are a couple of housekeeping notes. The restrooms are accessible outside the two doors right across from this hall. And we also do have masks available at the front for those who would choose to wear one. For those that are joining us in this hybrid forum, we would want them to know that they can ask questions or make comments by use of the chat function. At this call on Peter Bjorkin, who is the chair of the East County Citizens Advisory Board, to provide with
I just had to get all of it. Good evening, everybody. How are y'all doing? Great. My name is Peter Mielkin. I'm chair of the East County Citizens Advisory Board. And basically, at this point, I'd like to Mark Elrich, county staff, who helps set this up, including the Rec Center folks. And I'd like to recognize the members of the East County Citizens Advisory Board. If you could just stand up for a minute, I'd appreciate it. So these are all your community members who represent you. And finally, just to give you a brief description, East County Citizens Advisory Board is a board that works under the function of the county executive's office, under the boards, commissions, and committees charter. Our job basically is to be the voice of the community and basically get a sense back to advise the council, the county executive of issues that we see in the community. Any recommendations we have, we pass through. And these recommendations we pass through may be directly related to his office, or it may be related to county council decisions or planning board decisions, and maybe even a school board. Understanding that school board works under a different charter altogether. And with that, we are 18 members as a whole. And basically, we meet monthly, except for July and August, on the first Wednesday of every month. And then the following Monday after that, the second Monday, we have the committee meeting. The first committee meeting is the planning and economic development. The second meeting, which meets on
online in multiple languages. If you are joining us virtually, please follow the instructions on your screen to select the multilingual closed captions. Tonight, I will highlight a few key points on budget and the current fiscal climate. I will also share additional information from the county executive and about his budget priorities and have the opportunity for questions and comments. The purpose of this budget forum is to give the Montgomery County community the opportunity to provide input on the fiscal year 2024 operating budget. Also, during this forum, we will discuss the framework of how the operating budget is developed. This budget season, the county executive is sponsoring 8 hybrid budget forums as one of the many ways for the diverse community of Montgomery County to have a full share in the operating budget development process. These community conversations are the opportunity for you, Montgomery County residents, to express your views on the county's operating budget and the budget priorities. Your participation and engagement throughout the entire budget development process is both welcome and appreciated. Whether you're attending in person or via the internet, thank you for taking the time to participate tonight. The county executive and the Citizens Advisory Board greatly appreciate you joining us. Understanding the budget. Montgomery County has 2 separate, distinct budgets that are related. The operating budget, which we will cover tonight, primarily covers things such as services and programs, education, public safety, and social services. The county's capital budget primarily focuses on investments in facilities and infrastructure. Capital projects include construction and maintenance of buildings where the county's programs and services are delivered. This can include schools, libraries, recreational centers, police stations, and fire stations. Infrastructure investments also include maintenance costs for the county's streets, roads, and bridges. The county's open budget website is an excellent resource to further understand both the operating budget and the open budget website is www.montgomerycountymd.gov/open budget. Open budget is accessible and interactive with customizable information that can be downloaded, printed, and shared. In the operating budget section, you will find the budget and spending of our county's departments and agencies. This information can also be viewed for previous fiscal year budgets. You can also learn about county departments' initiatives, innovations, and improvements in this section of the website. In the capital budget section, maps are available. Additional details about council districts, planning areas, and projects can also be found in this section. Now let's look at the framework that goes into building the budget. Going to building the county's operating budget. Income from work, business income, dividends, Social Security, pensions, or other withdrawals from your individual retirement accounts. So the county goes through a similar process to project what the income will be for the year. Once the county has established the budget foundation with a good estimate of income that is or building block is the enrollment for school and college. Because of the state's maintenance of effort requirement, student basis from one year to the next. So as enrollment at MCPS and the college grows, what the county Any agreements? Your community is to engage with one of the regional community boards. There are 5 regional community advisory boards, and they help keep you up to date on issues within your community and allow your voice to be heard. On your screen now are the website addresses of each of the county's 5 regional community advisory boards. We highly encourage you to visit these links and to get involved. Now let's take a look at the county's fiscal outlook. Montgomery County highly prioritizes and focuses on financial sustainability and being good stewards of county resources. A balanced budget is required by law. So that means that even though resources can and do change, sometimes drastically, the expenses cannot be more than the revenue. The county is aggressive in meeting its reserve target policy and has done so. The county's reserve target of 10% has been met. The county is meticulous in managing the rate and growth of debt expenditures. And we have well-managed retirement obligations indicated by the pre-funding of our pension and retiree health insurance benefits. Let's look at the fiscal outlook and revenues. There are several components to the county's revenues that rose compared to the fiscal year 2022 estimates. However, some of these revenues are quite volatile. For example, the county's recordation and transfer taxes are strongly tied to home prices. Well, there's a lot of change in home prices. Those prices increased by 31.6% from January to July in 2021. However, they then took a turn and went down by 14.9% from July 2021 to July 2022. Let's also look at income tax revenue, which is strongly tied to the county's rate of unemployment. Again, we also have some volatilities in this revenue source. The unemployment rate increased from 3.5% in July 2019 to 7.8% in July 2020, declined to 6% in July 2021, and declined even further to 3.7% in July 2022. If there is a recession, it's possible that our unemployment rate could again increase, resulting in a reduction of income tax revenue to the county. Some good news is that the state announced in September of this year that they ended fiscal year 2022 with an unassigned surplus. However, this surplus is expected to be a one-time in nature, so most likely cannot be used for ongoing expenses. So far, in this fiscal year 2023, the county's tax revenues are on target compared with the estimates we made back in May when we were preparing for the fiscal year 2023 operating budget. We expect to have another update to our revenues shortly, and that will inform us whether we need to change our revenue outlook. So how does the county generate revenues? Where do they come from? The biggest percent of fiscal year 2023 revenues come from the dark blue bar on the chart, which is property taxes of almost $2 billion, which represent 30.5% of county revenues. The next biggest revenue stream for the county is from income taxes, shown here in the light blue bar, which is almost $1.9 billion and 29.2% of all the revenues. This revenue source, as I mentioned earlier, is volatile based on the ups and downs of the economy. So you can see that these two revenue sources combined account for almost 60% of the county's revenues. The intergovernmental revenues shown on the dark orange bar make up the third largest revenue source received by the county at almost $1.4 billion, which is 21.6% of total county revenues. Intergovernmental revenues include things like federal and state grants and aid for things like education, social services, and housing. So these top three revenue sources make up over 80% of the county's total revenue. The remaining revenue sources are much smaller. The transfer and recordation taxes that are tied to home sales that I mentioned earlier are shown here by the light green bar at $248 million in revenue, and they represent 3.9% of total county revenues. We discussed where the county's revenues come from. Now let's talk about where the money goes. In our approved fiscal year 2023 operating budget, you can see from the dark blue bar in this chart that Montgomery County Public Schools receives 46% of the county's operating budget. Montgomery College's budget, represented by the dark green bar in this chart, is 5.1% of the county budget. So if you add schools with the college, you have about at 10.5% of the county budget. Public safety is things like police, fire and rescue, corrections, and the sheriff's budgets. The third largest budget is not an agency or department budget. It's for debt service that results from borrowing for the capital budget. And that is shown here in the dark orange bar and is at 7.3% of the county's operating budget. And remember that debt service is an expense that must be carefully monitored and controlled. For the fiscal year 20, in terms of what percentages of revenues are for fixed and other commitments. this budget. Maintenance effect to the county's budget. The orange bar at 11.3% is for debt service. The green bar at 4.1% of the fixed costs associated with pensions, other post-employment benefits, and county reserves. With all of these fixed commitments, you can see that the light bar on the chart is only 32% of funding that's left over for county services that are important, like social services, housing, transportation, and public safety. Thank you all for your attention. I would now like to invite our county executive, Mr. Mark Elrich, to the podium to give his remarks.
All right, everybody. Good. Good. So good evening. I'm going to start by introducing Kristen Mink, who's stand up, Kristen. You're a new council member, and are there any delegates here? I didn't see anybody come in. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, we're good. Okay. So, yes. Thank you. So I'm happy to be here. And, when I got elected, one of the first things we changed was doing these budget forms before we did the budget, as opposed to doing them after we did the budget, because we thought the input would be more meaningful if we heard from you first. So we've been doing that. And so right now our budget's in process. So if you ask me what we're going to spend on anything tonight, my answer is I don't know. Partly because the department's just not putting budgets together, partly because we're going through meetings like this to hear what people's priorities are, and partly because in the older days, like maybe 5 years ago, we used to get our big distribution from the state in November, which told us basically what we were looking at in terms of income taxes. When the state delayed the tax date by 3 months, they can no longer produce the results by November. So we do have a November number, but it's substantially lower than what the actual number is going to be, though they haven't told us for sure what the actual number is going to be, just that it'll be significantly bigger. So we don't even really know yet quite how much money we have access to. So those are all the things that delay the way we do things, but it's a good thing that you guys get to give input into this process right now. We're in FY23, we're doing a budget for FY24, and we all know we're in 22, so where's all this work? So our years are July 1 to June 30th. The year of the budget is the ending year. So this budget will end in June of 23. Therefore, this is the 23 budget. The budget we're working on and that will pass in May will be the FY24 budget, just so nobody gets confused about where you are in time. And a couple other points I want to make about what was on the chart. The debt service is largely for schools, transportation, and capital expenses. So we do not use debt service for operating. So there is no, we have to have balanced budgets. Budgets have to be balanced against the revenues. So we have nothing in our budget is paying for an operating expense. Everything in the budget is a school transportation project or a capital budget, whether it's this rec center here, if it's what we do with BRT on 29, all these projects are all capital projects. And the other point to make is that of the whole $6 billion plus budget, only $1.2 billion is what goes to actually fund services, and about with the green natural gas and use that to power buses. We are solarizing as many of our buildings as we can. We've got the country's largest microgrid and bus charging station for the county's ride-on buses. The school system's on a path to change all their buses to electric buses through creative financing, which is legal but creative, and it's worked to our benefit. We're able to get electric buses for about the price as diesel buses, which normally you would not be able to do. So we're doing all the things we can do to green the government, and the school system has actually adopted the county's climate goals. But we will never achieve our goals if you don't play a role in this. You know, if people don't make decisions to put solar on the roofs or drive electric cars, there is no way that the county will ever achieve, 80% reductions or 100% reductions. And I believe there's a real urgency to this. I don't believe in climate denial. Every day the news only gets worse. And so we look at this from the perspective, these are things we have to do. But we're going to be encouraging residents to take a part in this. We're looking at creating more programs to incentivize people to make a transition to electric. The federal government has amazing sums of money out there, and we'll find out how the programs will operate in January. But there are a lot of things people can take advantage of. I've got an electric car. I've got solar on my roof. I'm probably going to swap out my remaining gas appliances when I see the federal incentive program, so I can take advantage of it. But you all should do the same thing. You don't have to do it today. Do it in January. But start thinking about this kind of stuff, because if this matters to you, if you only look to us to solve the problem, it will not get solved. So everybody's got to take some responsibility for getting us beyond where we are today. And the third part of this process is what you're doing tonight. It's the community participation. This isn't your last chance to talk to us. You can always send us emails. I still get emails about the budget, ask me about particular items. You've got council members you can talk to. You have community meetings. We have the regional service center meetings. So we continue to gather input from people as we go through this process. So the door doesn't shut tonight. And so feel free to keep letting us know what you think is important to you. Next. So this is a little bit of how we, look at things through the different lenses. The Racial Equity Office provides training and data sources to our staff. And again, like I said, there's not something everyone was trained in before. People did budgets. Nobody was thinking about how it was, whether it was equitable and, whether spending across the county reflected the diversity of the county. And so we revamped an operating tool so that we're able to actually score the departments. And the departments aren't necessarily always thrilled about this, but they're now getting scored and being told if they don't have adequate explanations, they have to go back and give better explanations for their choices. And I think at the end of the day, it results in real positive change. When you talk to the departments, they may get frustrated sometimes, but it's important that we go through this process. And so we're going through the process, and I think you all will see changes. But, I know everybody's got priorities, but we've got to make sure that everybody gets equally dispersed the kind of resources the county has. Next. We're looking in the environment at environmental sustainability. We need to make decisions that we know are going to work in the long run, not just the short run. We've made a lot of efforts to, like I said, change our fleets toward natural gas and electric. We have microgrids. We probably have more microgrids than any government right now in the United States, and we're building more microgrids. We actually got a grant from the federal government for $14 million to create a hydrogen station. And DC may become one of the hydrogen hubs. We're hoping they do. We're part of a group that's working to make that happen because hydrogen is probably going to play a much bigger role in the future of a country than lithium is in the long run. And we've got our first 14 buses in operation now. We'll be up to 71 in not too long. We're talking about 220 zero emission buses by 2029, and there may be a way to accelerate that. And like I said, our goal is 100% zero emission by 2035. And some of the priorities I had, when I ran last time, I told people I had a very short promise list. I was not going to do a Christmas tree because my concern was we knew we were going to run out of money. And sure enough, within 2 days of my getting inaugurated, I was told first that I had almost a $50 million deficit, and by March, that deficit had grown to $90 million. And so I knew that was coming, and it's good today that we've been able to run a surplus. We've been able to turn around where we were, but that's what we started with. And so I told people, if I'm going to sprinkle money all over the county, we're not going to do anything meaningful. So the two things I focused on are early childhood education, actually three things: affordable housing and then transportation. So in early childhood education, we put $5 million a year in to increase our funding for that, even through the pandemic. And we put in extra money to make sure we could keep the child care centers going and not have all of them shut down during the pandemic. And then last year we put in $20 million. And the good news is that Governor Moore has said that this is his priority, and he wants to accelerate it, and he wants to start work sooner, which is good news to us because we're willing to partner. We've got a large workforce. Many people haven't gone back to work because of child care issues, so we know we have to deal with child care so that families can get, all the breadwinners back to work. Also, it's an educational thing. I'm a former school teacher, and we have way too many kids who come to school absolutely unprepared in kindergarten. And if you look at our scores, there's nothing to shout about. We have a good system, but we're good compared to a lot of other systems that are really not good at all. And we have a long way to go to provide equity in educational outcomes. and we're not there yet. And early childhood is a critical part of it. I taught 4th and 5th grade. And if you have kids entering school 2 years behind, and I used to say, how could you be 2 years behind when you're 5 years old? But that's what they would say. The kids are coming in 2 years behind, lacking just basic skills. If you don't get those skills early, it's very hard to make them up. It's very hard to teach somebody a 3rd grade curriculum when they've got 1st grade skills. So I look at the expansion of childcare as absolutely critical to achieving equity. If I can start kids on an even keel, if kids enter kindergarten in the same place that everybody else in their class is, it becomes a lot easier to teach. You get to teach one lesson instead of trying to teach 3 different groups, 3 different lessons at the same time in a classroom. As somebody who did that, it is not an optimal way to teach, but it's what we have to do. So the sooner and faster that we can get people to a level playing field, the more progress we're going to make in education. And I don't have to convince anybody that education is the door to jobs and opportunity. And if we can get those doors open for more of our kids today, then the economic future for everybody gets better. Preserving and increasing affordable housing is critical. We've put money into eviction. We're using our money, primarily to do homelessness. We're not using all of it. We're using a chunk of it to do homelessness prevention now and tenant education. I've got a bill that I'm going to be putting in that will put limits on rent increases throughout the county and tie rent increases to inflation. The council, I'm going to support a temporary bill to extend the limit on rent increases that the county had passed and then let expire last summer. And there's a bill, I believe, that will extend that another 6 months, long enough for us to try to put a regular rent stabilization program in place. If you're not alarmed by rents in Montgomery County, you're a very lucky person. It is frightening where rents have gotten. And we serve with our housing programs not who we should serve. When Montgomery County adopted its landmark housing program, moderately priced dwelling units, in 1974, I think, it was meant to serve teachers, firefighters, and policemen because they were seen as the low-paid workers in Montgomery County. That Montgomery County was 95% white, 4.5% black, and 0.5% other. That's 1970. That's not Montgomery County today. And our incomes skew way different. The low people on the income totem pole are not firefighters, police, and teachers. They're not where they should be. They're not close to where they should be. But we have a large group of people who have come in and they work in the service industries, and they are really at the low end of the income totem pole. We have about 50,000 households who are spending 50 to 60% of their income in housing who make under $50,000. None of our housing programs, the MPDU program, those people make too little money to qualify for an MPDU. So I'm going to make a proposal to basically change what we do. We've got to serve a broader range of the population. We've got to deal with folks who earn less. It is shocking that, in Bethesda, if you earned 100% of area median income, which is north of $100,000, you couldn't afford an apartment in Bethesda, in the new apartment buildings. So we need to require a broader range of affordability. And I'm not shy about asking for it because if you think about it, we rezoned Bethesda. We give people who had 3-story buildings the ability to build a 25-story building. It massively increases their wealth. And we've been too shy to say in exchange for what we're doing, we expect a decent amount of affordable housing to come back to the community. So I would put legislation in front of the council to get us a decent amount of affordable housing, because there's no other way we're going to get it unless we start requiring it. And of course, we have to do more on our own. I've put 18 parking lots in the county up for sale to nonprofits primarily, but if there's a for-profit developer who's willing to do affordable housing, they can bid on these too. But we're going to try to put as much affordable housing into this as we can. And by affordable, we're really talking about people making $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. We don't have the kind of grinding poverty by and large. We have some of it, but not like some areas do, but just regular basic working people struggle to live here. So that's something that we're going to try to tackle, and to put more money into that and make better deals with developers and be more aggressive on our part. We're building the bus rapid transit system. We see the beginning of it over here. It will change south of New Hampshire Avenue, so it's truly rapid. I've told them you can't call it bus rapid transit until you get it into its own lane. I've been real, because I don't want to sell somebody on bus rapid transit that isn't bus rapid transit and then have people saying, why are we doing this? So we're going to continue to improve it over here and build bus rapid transit around the county. For the first time last year, we got money from the state government, which they have not funded anything for us before that, and now they're willing to fund, and we know Westmore will be more friendly with this, so we're looking forward to that. And we're ready to go to the federal government for some of our transit lines so we can start tapping into some of the federal funds that are available. And, my goal, I'm the person who actually wound up proposing the bus rapid transit system almost 14 years ago, which is not good. Because in Virginia, they've proposed things and built things in the time we've talked about things. But when we laid that out, we laid it out so we could connect people from where they live to where they work. And some people said, why are you building a bus line up, Colesville Road? Because there's no jobs up there. I said, because there's no jobs up there because there's no transportation up there. And so the more transit we put in, the more likely we are to get development up here. But also, you have all these people who are stuck driving their cars or sitting in very slow buses, one or the other, to get to work on the other end of the county or in D.C. And we have an obligation to make sure people here have access to transit, and we don't rule them out because simply there aren't enough jobs here yet. So that's one of the first lines that got started. We're going to finish it off and make some improvements in it. We're looking at New Hampshire Avenue, which I know is relevant to you. And then the rest of the county. And I think when this is all done, we'll have a nice web of different lines that connect to each other that can get you from where you are to any place else you want to be in the county. And we're fighting climate change, and I've talked about that, so I don't think I need to say any more. Just, we're serious. We want you to be serious. Help us. We're going through a process of reimagining public safety. I want to say we started on this before George Floyd. We did not get woke after that and suddenly discover we had a problem. We knew we had a problem when I came into office. And so we started the process of review. We've been in a 2-year police audit. The people doing the audit, the ELE4A, has been our consulting group on this. They have looked at large volumes of police body camera footage, for example. They have gone through personnel records and discipline records. They have sat through the training programs that we do at the academy, and they've given us a long list of changes that we need and have already started to implement. So a lot of the stuff isn't legislation. A lot of it is just a change in attitude, frankly, and changing what we teach in the academy. One of the major things is moving police from seeing themselves as warriors to seeing themselves as guardians, taking a different position as they view the community. And I've told people before, I don't have to defund police in order to beef up the social programs we need, and we're going to do beefing up the social programs. The police have become the primary mental health enforcers in the community. They deal with the drugs, they deal with the alcohol, they deal with people who are suffering from mental health crisis. None of those people should have been handled by the police, but we have no other way of handling it right now. Our jail is the largest mental institution in the county, and over a third of the people in jail are there with mental health issues. And they're there because the state will not build facilities to put people with mental health issues, so the judges are forced to put them in jail. So we need to try to figure out a way to move beyond that. We're building a restoration center so that if we pick somebody up for drugs, it could be alcohol, it could be mental health crisis, and they've done something stupid that could put them in jail, but they're not really hardcore criminals, they'll have the opportunity to go to a restoration center. And the restoration center will keep them out of getting a criminal record. I think we all know that if, we have this cycle and we recycle people, they go to jail, they come back out on the street, and they go back to jail, Then they come back out on the street and they go back to jail again. And when you go to jail and you've got that on your record, many employers won't hire you. And if you go to rent an apartment, many apartment owners won't rent to you. So you've created people who will not be able to work and will not be able to house themselves and then wonder why they're disaffected from society, and you can't integrate them back in. So we've got to find ways to integrate people back in to society rather than casting them out and then making sure they don't have a path back in. It's very expensive. And there's a study that I found fascinating because during COVID, Montgomery County and a lot of other areas sent a lot of people out of jail. Non-violent criminals were put back in the community. The study looked at this, and their conclusion was shocking. These people almost never recidivated. They had a very, very low rate. And so what is the point of jail to rehabilitate people, or is the point of jail to punish people? And whoever changed after you punish them? I was adequately punished by my parents. It didn't work terribly well. And I'm sure it didn't work for other people either. So we need a different approach to this. And I'm hoping that over time, and with a different governor, we can start rethinking our criminal justice system, because we've got to do better. And we can recover people. We've got to make sure we put the investment in to recover them. Lastly, going back to racial equity and social justice, you're going to see it in our budget. You see the expenditures we made on schools. Last year's budget had a record amount of school spending for school. We jumped it over $149 million from the year before. We did that because the schools were very clear that their students were dealing with learning loss and just struggling socially, emotionally, and academically, and they needed more resources. We put the resources in there. Affordable housing, which was a major problem, we put a record amount of affordable housing money into affordable housing last year. So we're willing to put money into things that we think will make a difference, and we're going to keep doing that. And I think this year's budget is going to give us some latitude as we go forward. Next. And then there's economic development. I think everybody has figured out that I'm kind of a liberal, progressive, on the left. You can pick whatever word you want for that, but I'm pretty much there. But, you cannot address social problems without resources. And you're not going to get resources unless you have an expanding and a growing economy. These two things are tied together. We get tax money, we can do good things. If we're starved for resources, then we don't do the things that we want to do. So our goal is to try to drive this economy as far as we can. So the big news of the last 2 weeks was we got a partnership with the University of Maryland to build a computing center for health at the White Flint, North Bethesda metro station. And Ramada is going to be using their property there to attract life sciences companies to be on the metro station. And we think, because what we're seeing in growth in biotech in Montgomery County, and an amazing explosion of lab space being created in Montgomery County, that we're going to be able to put ourselves on a path that takes away the reputation we have that we don't do anything and that we're not growing. And so our goal is to grow the economy as much as we possibly can. Over here, you've seen they've broken ground on the project at New Hampshire Avenue and the Beltway, and that's starting to happen. Town Center here with the new grocery store is under construction now. You see the walls going up. Burtonsville, I think they're going to start construction this year, which I'm really excited about. All those projects were stuck when I walked in here. When I came in 4 years ago, none of them were moving. And I put a lot of time and effort and got involved personally to make sure I could solve the issues between planners and engineers and the developers so they didn't sit there unbuilt. So this side of the county is going to see 3 new centers develop. Montgomery College is opening a campus here. You're going to see the first classes probably in the fall of next year. And it'll be, I think it's a 55,000 square foot facility initially, but they're looking to build a full-blown campus. And so they'll be looking for a site there they can put more buildings on. And they're going to now go to the state and get this into the state cycle for funding. And we think this is going to be a big deal for the east side of the county. The other parts of the county, kids go to Montgomery College out of high school. I was in Montgomery College in Rockville talking to a bunch of kids who will be maybe 18 when they graduate, and they're graduating with a 2-year certificate from Montgomery College degree and the high school diploma. When they go to school next year, they go to Maryland if they want to, and they start in the 3rd year at the age of 18. This is a big deal. This opens up opportunities for the kids they never would have had before. I want that on the east side of the county. And so that's where we're going to work to bring it over here. So I think there's good news ahead. I think we've been, successful with the 3 of the 4 big projects here. And if there's any movement on the project with Viva White Oak, we've got $40 million sitting in a bank. Anytime there's something to build over there. So in the meantime, I think we've got ourselves on a good track, and I'm happy to take questions from you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Now we open it up for the Q&A portion of this presentation. Good evening, everybody. I'm Lorna Vagelli, Hispanic Public Information Officer for the county, and we will be taking your questions. We're at the live audience as well as some of the questions of the virtual participants. So with that, Joe, and okay, raise your hands, and since this is a very full house, I would suggest start from the back to the front or front to the back, but have some order. All right, do we have a first question from the audience? Sir, can you stand up and...
Sure. All right, thank you. My name is Bert. I'm with African Communities Together in Bristol County resident. I was so happy to see racial equity signatures on your plan here. My question here today is, and also suggestion, especially this part of the county has a lot of African immigrants, and one of the priorities for the community is getting immigration legal services, which is very expensive for the community to do, like simple things, being able to be naturalized, be citizen, or have their green cards processed, or being able to bring families from back home. All this costs a lot of money, and our organization, African Communities Together, have been able to get some funding from the DC government, and we were able to provide that. But most of the requests for our offices come from this county, because this is where our community is. We were able to get $25,000 in the last 2 years, and was not enough, but we were able to stretch that, and we provided immigration legal services to 120 of our community members here. But we could use more to be able to do that.
So we're in the beginning of the grant process, probably closer to the end of when the applications have to be in. So you need to make sure that you get an application in there, but you should also talk to our Office of Community Partnerships about what kind of programs we do partner with. Okay. Because I know there is some partnership with people in the county.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Hi. Can I go ahead?
No, I said hi.
Okay. Hi, my name is Ayu Humphreys. I am a Montgomery County resident, and today I'm representing Aitu Cultural Center. And we've been, I think, Mark, you were there also in our event last time, and then we've been in the community for a while, but our organization is serving our community for the last 22 years. Just to go ahead, and for people who don't know our community, I see a lot of faces here who've been to our events and who participated to our what we do, and then you're familiar to it. So as for the last 22 years, Aitu Cultural Center it's an art and cultural center, and we have actually a monthly poetry night every Friday, and we serve, just to give you a number, we honor like monthly around 238 monthly poetry nights and 9 annual African poetry nights on September on African Heritage Year. Actually, that's maybe the only center in the community, or I can say maybe in the country, which has a poetry night with Swahili, French, Arabic, Amharic, with a lot of language, and then bringing the community together. And as your main signature funding is justice and equality, I can say a lot about our community, which I might take as many hours as you did if I start to talk about I2. But the main thing I want to focus on is having our center every Tuesday, for example, for the last several years, we have group of kids, young adults, and youth. We are training out poetry, writing, and directing and art. So our community, I feel like our center is bringing youth from being out on the street and doing other things, just expressing their anger toward art and a bit through art and then through writing, through drawing. So we've been asking, the county actually, we applied before for some funding, but most of us are volunteers and not grant writers, but sometimes the amount of money we pay for a grant writer costs us more money than what we get, so which is we never get one. So, and then we never get also an answer what we got even refused. So because of that, we haven't asked anything for the last 3-4 years. But I expect in this coming year, seeing what we did, and then we also have a meeting. This won't cover everything. Having a meeting with you and then just presenting what we do and having a budget for art and culture. We need that representation. Thank you.
So I'll just say what said the other gentleman. Be sure you get into the process. The last 3 years, all our funding levels were flat because we didn't know what COVID was going to do to our budget. And the first budget I had was terrible because we lost the $90 million, so we weren't expanding anything. But this is probably the first year. We've got a new budget office, a new grants office, and so we're probably going to do some expansion of things this year. So try to get yourself back in the cycle.
In a little cramped office, I'm sure Montgomery County have places which at least we can use our county, our center can use.
I don't have empty buildings. What I have is, I've got a rec center like this. We've got libraries with meeting rooms. You've got another rec center by Maryland, where Maryland Prisoner Library is. So there are multiple places where people can have meetings. The one thing I'm looking at, and I don't know if I'll be able to do this, is when they moved the Burnsville Elementary School, where they built it on the new site where it was supposed to be moved, that space has become available. I know the school system's interested in doing early childhood there because it would give them a place, but that also means it has potential use at night. And I'm looking at, I will be talking with them about whether we can work out an arrangement of us using it at night for meetings, them using it during the day for school, and then rehabilitating the fields there, because fields are another thing that are in short supply on the East County. So if they're willing to let us use the fields, there's no reason they would say no. If we could use the fields on weekends and, in the summer, it would be another opportunity for people that have activities that right now are very limited. But I promise you, I'm not holding on to the real estate. I don't have any buildings that are empty. I don't know why everybody thinks we do. Yeah.
I just wanted to thank you for funding or putting in funding for the Office of the People's Council in the last budget.
I will do it again.
Which the County Council took out, and just how important that is to protect residents' interest. And I was also going to ask that you fund monitoring of radio frequency emissions on the cell towers that are on, especially on low-income buildings such as Park Ritchie.
We are talking about what we're going to do to change the process. I agree with, I know what you would say. You would say that you don't get to, nobody listens to you. We've got a tower committee that takes no citizen comment and pretends to evaluate things and then just signs off on stuff even when there's no data. That's all true. So our goal is to change that. And so, we've worked with the council to get through this cell tower bill. And then we'll turn our attention to the committee and to the requirements, because it is a problem to have standards and then not enforce the standards. So I hear you.
Thank you very much.
It is my ongoing concern is not encouragement growth of private businesses in the county. Do not partnerships with public schools, volunteer
programs and other governmental funded entities. What will you be doing to promote business growth, especially small businesses in Iowa? The microphone.
You want to try that again if they couldn't hear you?
All righty.
Yeah.
Thank you. Here we go again. Thank you. It is my ongoing concern we do not encourage the growth of private businesses in the county, not partnerships with public schools, colleges, and other governmentally funded entities. What will you be doing to promote business growth, especially small businesses countywide?
Well, we're actually doing a couple of things. We've got an office. I forget, we just renamed it, but it was the Business Advance Team. And every regional service center is going to have a team attached to it where people can come in and get assistance. If you want to start a small business, if you have a small business and you need some help or guidance, we're going to be there to help do that. Montgomery College actually does do work, incubation work, and is interested in helping people. They don't just do degree programs there, they do certificate programs. So you can go and get training that's specific to what you want to do without having to go through a whole degree program. We've got incubators in the county. I'll be honest with you, one works really well, the other two don't work so well, and we're going to try to change them so they work the way they're supposed to work. But we had a report done last year, but hopefully we'll bring it back to the council this year and see if we can get the support to put the incubator programs back in place. I'm a big believer in the incubator space, and I've been up to Baltimore and I've seen their program up there. They're far better than anything we do down here, and they're much more anchored in the community. So my goal is to, reinvigorate the connections in the community, encourage people to open businesses at the CHI Center just down the street from here. We're looking at putting some form of incubator in there. We've talked about working with Bethesda Green about taking the part of the top floor of that building and using that as incubator space. So this is a priority for me, and hopefully if the council supports putting money into this, we'll expand the incubators.
Some questions from the House?
Oh, okay, thank you. Do I stand up or do you want to?
You can.
Yes, please stand up. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you, County Executive and everybody. My name is Stephanie Mbela, and I'm here on behalf of the Francophone Africans Alliance. I do have two questions for you. Number one, I understand the scarcity of office and housing in the county. That is a common problem, but I just wanted to ask you if for the FY24 budget, you will be able to kind of create a grant that will serve for the nonprofits that will be interested in maybe co-sharing space, where they apply for the grant that is available through the county, and then if they are interested in using a space different times of the week, like one nonprofit that is eligible can use it Monday, another one can use it the following day. And the reason I'm asking is because for the Africans that are in this area, what we have noticed is there is a lack of a hub where they can find information. So it's really difficult for them to access all that information that is available. And there's a digital gap. And for the Francophones, there even, in addition to that, the linguistic gap. So if there is like a place where we can meet, share the space with other nonprofits, it's just a normal business, but get a grant through you, that would be helpful. So that's my first question. The second question is, as you are looking through the equity lens, is there somewhere in your budget a plan through one of the Department of Social Services to hire culturally competent social workers that can also even be health navigators? And again, the reasons being based on the information that we have collected on the ground. There is so much information that is available to the county, but it doesn't trickle down. And the social workers, and there is like a rift between the social workers that are currently doing their best to help and the populations that they really want to help. So those are my two questions, and thank you.
So on the last one, we're like everybody else right now in this environment in terms of lacking the ability to hire social workers. The school system wasn't able to fill they had a budget for social workers. They're still short of filling it. We're short of filling positions that are vacant in the county. If you know Francophone social workers who are looking for work, send them our way. Francophone or otherwise, because if people have that skill set, you have the requirements, there are positions that we need to hire for. So we're happy to diversify. We've been pretty, open about if we can find the people with the skill sets, we will bring them in. And we know that people have to have people they can talk to and relate to. And it was the thing about that the COVID response that made the COVID response work as well as it did was that instead of us doing everything out of HHS, which would have been the normal way to do things, we actually gave a lot of leeway to community groups to design programs and tell us how they want to implement programs. And we provided the funding and let community groups do more of the work, and we got ourselves out of the way. And I think, that's a good model. That's why we've kept all the hubs that sprung up during COVID. We're keeping the hubs as a permanent fixture, and I'm looking to put some of our social service people out in the hub world rather than everybody in Rockville. So we're going to try to move in that direction. As far as space goes, if you're going to get a grant, you're going to have a place because you have to be able to spend it. So if you had a proposal for a space you knew you could get and a group of people you knew would rent from you and share the rent, then that's going to have a lot better prospect in the grant process than just saying we'd like money and hope we find some place. Because you will lose to somebody who knows what they need and can say, and if you give me money, I'm going to do this, this, and this. So you can talk to Harriet, and we can talk, help steer you in the direction of grant writers or help people who can at least help you frame what you want. But in a time when there's more ask for things than there is money, the things that are ready to be set up are usually the things that are going to get prioritized first. And if I can work with the school system and get that elementary school, and we can use the rooms at night, that should help a lot of the different groups find space to have meetings. But if we get to that point, I would actually need your help because you all would have to provide the community impetus to go to the East County saying, let's take that school and use it as a community center and fields and childcare. So we can go to the school system and say, look, this is a real call from the community for these services. You're not using the building, so let us figure out how we can use it and serve the community. That's the quickest, fastest I can see getting a hold of a building.
Okay, good evening. I'm Courtney Hall. I'm wearing a couple of different hats, and I'm the CEO of Interfaith Works. We serve 35,000 people in the county who are experiencing poverty. I'm also a board member for Nonprofit Montgomery, and I'm also a board member for the Montgomery County Black Collective. So my questions really sort of hit on all of those. County Executive, I'm just interested if you could talk a bit more about your commitment to ensuring that nonprofit organizations who, as you have said and know, have been doing the essential work in the county throughout the pandemic, keeping things running, as you've said. Often these nonprofit organizations have inadequate contract funding structures, especially as compared to for-profit companies who may have indirect rates as high as 25%, and often much of that is not questioned, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd like to sort of suss out your commitment to working with either your grants office or some of the departments specifically to ensure that nonprofit organizations have adequate funding, contract funding structures similar to for-profits. That's my first. And then the second.
Let's start with that first. You can get them because I will not remember.
Okay.
We did a lot last year because we had the resources to do that. And so what we do depends on resources at the end of the day. So how far we fund and what we ask you to do is ultimately going to be dependent on where the money is. And you compete, as everybody else does, with, for example, schools. So it is hard sometimes to weed it out. I saw your request for adequate funding. I didn't think the amount of money you were talking about struck me as crazy for the two programs you talked about there. We've increased pay. I wish we could get the state to play along with us because frankly, your workers are competing and getting paid probably no better than somebody working at Target or McDonald's. And if you're dealing with stressful situations with people with challenges, or you're dealing with homeless people, and then your choice is I can make the same amount of money flipping a burger. In fact, they're probably not even flipping burgers anymore. It's all automated. But putting a burger in a package and putting it across the counter, that's tough competition. It's, and I deal with my own son because the nonprofit that funds or funded the programs for my son could not find people to hire to take care of him. That's gone on for 2 years. So I understand the problem firsthand. We will fund as much as we can fund.
Okay. That's good. That's a good answer. I appreciate it. And I appreciate the attention. But what I'm specifically pointing out is that there are different funding structures for for-profit companies that are different from what nonprofits are often able to draw.
So I would invite you to show me, what for-profit company am I funding that does the same thing that a nonprofit does, that I'm giving more money to than I would give you to do? Because my inclination would probably be to flip the funding.
Yeah, no, I understand that. And I think where you're going is a valid point. It's unlikely for-profits are doing the same work as nonprofits, but I'm talking about the contracts that are being issued. My second point, though, to get to...
Which contracts?
Maybe
my IT contracts?
Maybe we could have another conversation
about
that. So the second point, though, is about similarly for Black-led nonprofits and Black businesses. So as you know, the Montgomery County Black Collective is focused on sort of building the capacity of Black-led nonprofits and Black businesses in specific. And I've heard you and accept and appreciate your continued interest in that. I think I just want to hear you say it again, that you will continue to fund and support many of the Black businesses probably who are represented here in this room, so that they can compete and have access to information.
So I was part of the effort to stand up the program we put in place last year. And in fact, I put in the money to fund it for the whole year rather than temporary funding. And when I did it, I told everybody that I'm not going to do this 1 year, just to do it 1 year, because it wouldn't make any sense. And I wasn't going to do it in 1 year that was an election year because it was convenient, that I would keep this thing funded, and I intend to keep it funded.
Hi, Mark.
Hey.
It's Jeremiah again.
Mm-hmm.
Just a couple of things. First, I want to acknowledge the fact that congratulations on winning your election. I want to say that I did appreciate you acknowledging at your speech during the inauguration that Black people here in the county are at the bottom of everything.
Yes.
That's facts. So let's be clear. We have a lot of needs, but we're at the bottom. When it comes to education, housing, employment, we're at the bottom. And so I thank you for acknowledging that. And I thank you for, this presentation. But a couple of things I want to say. I came here last year to talk about the budget. And it seems to me that the numbers are almost the same. So it seems that the revenue has not increased over time. It's like we're, shuffling apples to oranges and removing money here and there, but we haven't generated no new revenue. And we hear these people out here in the audience, and everybody has needs, but we have to grow Montgomery County's economy. And I thank you for talking about a couple of programs and things you're trying to do to grow the economy. But as my brother here said, we want to make sure that the Black business community does not be left behind. So that's the first thing. The other thing is that we have a lot of public safety issues here in the eastern part of the county. I get calls, I get emails, I'm on listservs, and people are actually scared to walk in their community. They're actually scared to step out, actually here in the White Oak community. And so my first question for you is this: are we going to shift any revenue into the public safety piece so we can have more police officers to be able to combat some of these crimes? Because like I said, I'm hearing people with these break-ins. I'm hearing people breaking in people's houses, people's cars, and that's becoming a problem. And I'm hearing officers say that they don't, we don't have enough officers out here in the community to do these things. So that's number one.
So that was, a long building problem. And when I got elected, we knew our pay rates for police were falling below everybody else's. I put in a bill to raise police. I worked with the union to get comparability to other jurisdictions, and the council wouldn't do it. That wasn't good for morale either. 2 years later, this last budget, we've raised our police pay, so it's comparable. So our recruit class this year is 31 people, which is more than the recruit classes for the last 2 years combined. And we're going to continue to make sure that we don't let that pay slip below what's comparable for other jurisdictions, pay and benefits. Our benefits are pretty good. Our pay was less good. So we're going to continue to make sure we can do that. And when they have more officers, then they can move them around better. But right now, it's like robbing Peter to pay Paul. When there's a hot spot, addressing a hot spot takes it away from somebody else's hot spot. So over time, if things keep the way they're going now, we will continue to expand the police. I will say on the economic stuff, we put far more money into this budget, into things that matter than we had done before. We were very happy last year, and we exceeded the council's spending affordability guidelines because we were able to show them that our revenues were above their anticipated revenue guidelines. And we will spend what we can spend. And if, there's never been an appetite for tax increases. So
that's what I would leave.
So I think, there are things I would do it for. I would do it for schools. Yeah. And I think, but that's got to be a community discussion. Because if people are going to say no to tax increases, then your revenues are limited to a pace of growth. And, and you're in a country that's not growing terribly fast, not just Montgomery County.
I think the modern.
Mr. County Executive is 8:29. We're scheduled to be here till 8:30, but I believe we have a lot of questions still from the live audience and a couple from the virtual audience.
How about 8:45?
8:45. Thank you very much. If the audience can keep the comments a little bit more concise so that we can move and cover more ground. Next.
Yes, I'll make this concise. So the Sears Shopping Center.
Yep.
What's the plan?
I don't know. Talk to the developer. I mean, if you want to give the government the power to seize lands and develop land, let me know. Because this is owned by one of the wealthiest developers around. And they're letting it sit there. So I don't want it to be an eyesore either. I don't have the ability to. Okay. You know economic development. If there were demand, these guys, they're zoned for big, tall buildings over there. If there was a demand, they'd be putting shovels in the ground. And so when you look at things that aren't happening, it ain't us. It's the private sector doesn't have clients, doesn't feel this is the time to do that. But we're trying to make investments to make it worthwhile. That's why, bringing the college over here, getting the 3 other shopping centers going, getting Montgomery College. It's all meant to create in people's minds that this isn't, the East County of yesterday. This is a growing, thriving place now. Please come here.
Hopefully, like I said, leadership, make sure.
Look, we've been doing, so we're going to keep doing. I'm not done.
I'll be super quick because I want to hear the rest of the questions also. But I was just going to comment to the question about culturally competent social workers and how there's such a shortage of social workers. That I was actually at the nonprofit Montgomery gathering this morning and having an interesting conversation about the option there to be creative. And for example, you can waive some of the licensure requirements for social workers, and there are alternatives that you can look at. And some of those licensures requirements, when you look at who makes it past that last bit of the screening process, you do see some of the systemic racism play out there that we see in other types of standardized testing, and we lose a lot of our culturally competent, fully trained social workers there. So allowing for experience to be used for other alternative methods of certifying someone is an option that the council would be happy to talk to you about. And also would love to talk to you more about your comments around the Black Collective and nonprofit funding and making sure that we're making good
good use of the funds, to your point, Mark, and making sure that we are funding overhead and things so that there's real sustainability in the nonprofit work that's going to become a part of our ongoing county work.
Just so you know, I'd be very open to doing what Hogan did at the state level, which is basically saying no more requirement for degrees. Just, judge people by their experience and skills and stop using that as the ticket to get in.
Awesome. Raise your hands and see how many questions we have in the back. We have about 3 people. Okay. 4?
Okay. I will try to be very quick. My name is Wendy Ayala, and I'm actually serving a couple roles here. I am a resident and MCPS parent. I oversee a college access and retention program here that primarily serves Montgomery County, and I also serve on the Victim Services Advisory Board. But just wanted to share 2 main concerns, just hearing a lot about how funding is mainly going to education. However, I just had actually a presentation with the Education Trust last night with our board, with Collegiate Directions, it's a program that I work with, and just seeing that there are resources and there's a lot of funding going towards it, but there are still so many students who are not being served. Working with so many high schools here in the county, many students weren't even aware, right, of the tutoring that they had access to, and that's something that's very common, I think, in Montgomery County, especially being born and raised here, where there's so many resources, and there's so much funding going to it, but those resources are not reaching those populations, particularly when we're talking about seeing the disparities with farms, Latino students being like completely at a different level, closer to, 30% of math and literacy performance compared to those who are, non-farms white. And then also with public safety, similar to other concerns that were here, there's people who are feeling unsafe. And I know funding more to the police is one thing, but or to pay them more, but really understanding the root of what's happening, right? We've seen an increase in assaults and, thefts. And it's something that, again, being born and raised here, it was not something that necessarily even I grew up like really feeling like unsafe walking the streets. And that's now something that I have to be concerned with when I have a 5-year-old going to school. So just wanted to share those concerns. Thank you.
This is why I do not encourage people to talk about defunding and getting, the problem with police is the quality of the encounter. I think we want police to keep people safe. The concerns have been the qualities of the encounters, and we can deal with the quality of the encounters. And I think, have a decent relationship. But that's going to take some time to amend some wounds on all sides of this. It's, I'm old enough to know there was a history of policing, which is pretty ugly in this country for a very long time. So a lot of people have memories and they know what that was like. So it's hard to erase all that. But we've got to move beyond where we are, because you can't stay stuck in this place forever. It's not good. Your other questions about schools, I encourage you to find your school board members and talk to them, because what's happening in schools is only controlled by them. We are, by law, state law, required to give them as much money as we give them. And then we go beyond because we know the needs, but they've got to have effective programs that address it. And that's where I think parents have got to be saying, look, we're happy you're getting all this money, but let's have conversations about what's effective and what's not.
Microphone.
Okay.
Can we get another question back there?
Hi, Mr. Elridge. Thank you so much for your forum this evening. My name is Alice Barrett. I'm a managing attorney at the International Rescues Committee's Silver Spring office, the IRC. I just wanted to re-emphasize the importance, as noted by my fellow attendee this evening, of funding for immigration legal services, which the IRC has expanded capacity for. I'm also a long-term resident of Montgomery County and proud to have lived in a county that has been welcoming of record numbers of refugees, immigrants, and unaccompanied youth. And just wanted to emphasize really the importance of continuing to expand funding for those services, given how much status really plays into so many of the goals that you emphasized tonight. including just the basic ability to remain employed, the basic ability to use revenue from employment to sustain housing, and to avoid spiraling poverty that can in turn lead to mental health crises and disproportionate targeting by law enforcement, because our immigrant and refugee communities really contain so many of the low-income workers that you were talking about tonight. So just wanted to thank you very much for your focus on that and ask you to continue to keep immigration legal services in perspective. Thank you.
This is deeply held belief to me. I feel responsible, particularly when it comes to Central American refugees. This country played such a role in setting that place on fire that these are the casualties of the mess we made, and we've got a responsibility to clean it up in a humane way. So I do feel obligated, particularly, to deal with that issue.
Hi, Mark. I'm Coach Rofo. I represent ISIDA. After COVID, to present my organization serve over 1,000 youths in the East County here. And we know the youth is our future. I just want to bring something on your attention. The field rental. We know we have some of a turf field here in the East County, and the kids living in this community cannot access to those fields. People from Bethesda, Potomac, or we lock down those fields. Is there any policy need to be changed? Those kids who live here in this community also can enjoy those turf fields, or any better place to continue enjoy what we used to guide them? That's just a question.
So you should get with J-Road. We should look at who uses fields where in the county, because some people have more access and are more mobile, and if they can go anywhere and use all fields everywhere, that cuts out the community that has the fields from getting access to them. I'm willing to take a look at that. And you guys know each other really well.
Good evening, and good evening, everyone. Thank you, County Executive. Congratulations. With Montgomery Moving Forward, a collective impact initiative of Nonprofit Montgomery. I want to thank you and everyone for the excellent work you've done in strengthening the relationship between county government and nonprofits. And we believe that our nonprofits are key partners with county government in making communities thrive. So we kindly ask that you consider making more room for new organizations in the community grant process, that there is more provision for grant funding to smaller nonprofits and ones that have not traditionally received funding in the past from county government, especially those that are led by people of color and by immigrants. So that way there's a more equitable approach in the accommodation of these groups and in the disbursement of funds. Would like to know how you plan to do this. And Nonprofit Montgomery will be happy to be a connector and partner to help with outreach to the Black and Brown communities and to immigrant communities. Thank you.
There's a grants approval process, and hopefully, we've got a grants office now. We've changed the structure. We've got contracts and grants separated. They're just setting up. I know he's just hired the 2 staff people he's going to have. So hopefully this is going to wind up being what we all hoped it would. My goal was to get grants out when the year starts, rather than 3, 4, 5, 6 months later, which makes it impossible for many organizations to operate when they don't have the funds they're supposed to have. I've personally gotten involved in a couple of places where I just was kind of alarmed at the way things are being handled. And I'll keep paying attention as much as they need to pay attention. I will say there's always a tension between more groups and maintaining funding for existing groups, because I do not have an infinite ability to expand my budget. And so I think we've got to ask ourselves sometimes, what is the highest value the groups are bringing? You can be diverse, but do I need to expand everything? Because I don't know I've got enough money. There were times back when I was on the council, we would realize that all we're doing is essentially funding a computer and part of a staff person in some organization's office, and it's not really going into the programming and things, which means they struggle because they don't have money to expand. And, we could have taken that money and had fewer recipients, but with larger amounts of money so they could have put more program out there. So there's a tension between these two things. So I would ask you all to be part of the process of thinking about this, because it's easy to say you want more groups and more money. It's another thing for me to have the money, and it's another thing to give you the more groups, and then you all discover that, well, I gave you what you wanted, but the slices of the pie got smaller. So, but I'm always happy to work with you all, so to figure out how the best ways to do this.
Good evening. My name is Meha Sabia. I'm a resident of Montgomery County, and also I'm a co-founder of nonprofit organization. So my question is, I would like to know what the county has to support nonprofit organization, professional organization that's ready to support underserved communities through mentorship or education. Our organization is Ethiopian Nurses Association in North America.
So we don't have preset categories. Like I said, this is the first year after a couple of years where we're going to probably have a more open process to more new people applying for funds. So you have to go, again, I would say talk to Harriet or whoever the expert is here on going through this process, because there's a process you have to go through. I have people all the time that come up to me halfway through the year, and it's like, look, we've got this organization. Can you give us some money? And the answer is no, because the money's all committed in the budget. So you've got to get into the process so that you become part of the decision making. And it's really, really important, because once that budget you saw is allocated to departments, the money in the department is the money in the department. So be sure you get the position where you can actually apply for it. And we've got people here who can help you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question from the audience and then from the virtual participant.
Yes, good evening, everybody. How are you, Chief Executive? Congratulations. I'm Pastor James Sango. A 20 years resident of Montgomery County, and I've been in this county supporting the leadership here. And I want to speak on behalf of the faith-based organizations. Everybody have spoken about, let's say, small grassroots organizations, especially faith-based groups and nonprofits. I don't want to duplicate, but I just want to incite this here. Since I've been in this county, I've seen leaderships, and from Ag Leggett to your leadership, I want to commend you for the kind of protection and the good work you are doing in Montgomery County. Especially from your first term, it was a real risk, and I saw your fight. I'm your hearing sponsor, your supporter. I've never met you. This is my first time coming to speak on the microphone. I just been in the hearing agenda. But today I want to confirm to you that from you at this juncture, I know that you will take Montgomery County to a greater level, because I see your leadership to be inclusive. So I want to thank you for that. And I will know that you will have solutions to all these questions, because I've seen you from the first time that you had a challenge on budget during the COVID, and you challenged the governor on some issues. I myself, I applaud you to that. And you told leadership because they needed you to follow, but you said no. What I need from a county is based on the people's need. So I turned you to be the people's candidate. So from my heart, you are a good leader. Please consider your next bid for the governor of Maryland. I'm saying this because I see that the Honorable Mark Ehrlich has a strong value leadership, and I think he can make Maryland to be a different place. So I think, I don't want to take the time, but I will have another meeting, I think, with you personally. To add on to this, I have expertise in public policy for the University of Maryland. Despite me being I didn't say it from the beginning, but I'm pastor. I'm Pastor James Sango. So I run the pastor of the Holy Church of Jesus Christ Global Ministries. 20 years. I have not received a grant, but still, I'm your strong supporter.
Thank you.
You are doing a good job. Continue.
I will say, I love Montgomery County, and this is what I want to do. I mean, there's so much work you can do here. I mean, I didn't do this so I could figure the next step in a ladder. I'm doing this because I want to build what I can here. So I'm happy here.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. We'll close it on that note. And any other closing remarks from you, Mr. Executive?
Just that, I really like doing these meetings, and every time I go out and do it, I'm reminded why I wanted to do it, because I feel like this is an opportunity for people to speak and to be heard and, to challenge, some of our assumptions about things. But there's no path forward and no way you make progress if you don't have processes that are messy sometimes. And so I'm perfectly comfortable with messy processes. I'm perfectly comfortable with questions. And I really do enjoy the back and forth with people. And I try to take into account what we can do. At the end of the day, our job is to make this a better world. I came out of the 60s. I am still the person who wanted to change the world when I was 18 years old. I still want to change the world. I want it to be a better place. So that's what I take my job to be. And you only do that if you work with people who inhabit the world. You can't do this from an ivory tower. Thank you.
Mr. Executive. We have one more question that came in, if you don't mind, very quickly. My name is Zoe Polak. I'm a Montgomery County resident and a graduate of MCPS. I am immunocompromised and I have medically high-risk family in the county. So public health is a priority for me. My understanding is that most federal funding related to COVID is ending. Given that, how will the county prioritize public health and reduce the transmission of COVID and other diseases like RSV? When will mask mandates be brought back to healthcare settings to protect patients and providers?
So different settings have mask requirements. I know that our buses have a sign on them saying you have to wear a mask. I was talking to somebody today who said all the doctors are back into saying if you're coming into a health setting, you have to wear a mask. I don't think the mask policy was bad. I thought it was the right thing to do. And what we're tracking right now is hospital occupancy. COVID has gotten milder. Most people, if they get sick, it's a mild case. Not so much if you've never been vaccinated, but if you've been vaccinated, it's a mild case. You all, if you haven't gotten your new booster, you should get your new booster. It's the only one that really has protection against Omicron. The other ones, not so much. So it's in your interest to do that. And the same thing with the flu vaccine. Those things, they will keep you out of the hospital. The metric we're looking at, we climbed to 130 cases per 100,000, which is about where we were before. And our transmission rate, I think, today or whatever was about 13, which is not, it's not great. It's no longer low, but it's not high. And what we're looking at is hospital occupancy. And if the number of combined cases of COVID, flu, and RSV wind up filling up the hospitals, then we will wind up with mask mandates again, because we've got to break the transmission. We are, if you all know what a vector is, it's the thing that carries something from one place to another. Human beings are the only vector for COVID. You get sick when you come in contact with another human being. And so it's sad to say, but the only way to break transmission is to put a break in contact. That's why what we did during the pandemic created the lowest rates in the country, because we were the most serious about enforcing, closures of businesses, which was really hard on businesses. All the limitations we put on actually kept us safer. Montgomery County has 2/3 the death rate of the rest of the country. Put another way, if everybody else had done what we would have done, we'd have had about 300,000 more Americans alive today. So we know that this works. So if we get in a situation where the hospitals start filling, and they are moving up now, then we will do something, because we can't have the hospitals be over capacity where they can't take care of the patients and they don't have beds. So we're monitoring that. If we have to do that, we'll recommend it. Hopefully we won't have to. Hopefully this wave will pass before it gets to the worst point and we'll go about our lives more normally. I prefer normal to the other way, but I also prefer being alive and seeing people alive a year from now than being in an environment where people die. So that's what we'll do.
Thank you, Mr. County Executive. Thank you to the audience for participating tonight. And we have 2 more of these conversations next week, one upcoming and another one in Bethesda if you're interested. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
$1,000 for adoption. We're around 2,000 a year.
2,000 a year, but you do service about 10,000.
Oh, Tom or Danny, can you answer that? How much do we service a year?
Yeah, we take in about anywhere from 55 to 5,800 animals every year.
Okay.
We can't predict that. It's just not a predictable number, but that's about the range we have stayed at for about the last 5 years.